Shalom.
So,
So, the next question I have for you tonight is, what is a man's true role or responsibility?
I guess you have to be a little bit more clear on that question because if the man is an employee, then his role, his true role would be to his employer. So he has to do everything that's pleasing to his employer. So be a little bit more.
Well, I guess I'm more speaking of the Hebrew man. What is his role and responsibility as a Hebrew man? Not just as like a husband, but encompassing everything. As a man, a husband, a father, a leader,
A
a
man's
son.
okay. A man's first responsibility is to fear and obey the Creator.
Hmm.
And by fear, you understand that I'm not speaking about being afraid of the Creator.
Okay.
I'm speaking about his desire to be pleasing to the Creator. That's the man's first responsibility. Man's second responsibility is to know thyself.
Hmm.
He has to understand who he is as a man. He has to be satisfied with himself and his progress and his development into manhood. Part of the problems that we have today is that a lot of men are not men because they haven't developed into manhood.
Hmm.
Some people have been required to do manly things, but they're not capable. They may be the age 40, 30, 40, and 50 years old, which is the age requirement of a man, which people would expect would be a good age for a man to begin to act like a man, but they haven't learned the things needed to become a man. I don't think your intent was to be that deep.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna travel that road with you. As a young man, as a boy, the boy's job is to learn everything that he can from older men so that he himself can develop one day into a wise young man and then eventually into a wise man. A lot of men don't search after wisdom today.
Hmm.
A lot of men, males, gravitate toward negativity and destruction. Everybody chasing a dollar, but very few are chasing wisdom.
Okay.
You see, people like W.E.B. Du Bois, when he was a young man, he searched after wisdom and knowledge and understanding and did a very good job accomplishing it. By the time he became an adult, he was fully versed in, well, I think it was 5 languages
Hmm.
as a young Hebrew man. Today, we don't search out those type of things. We too busy trying to get a dollar because we started our lives too soon by having sex too soon, unprotected sex, and making children. Now we're forced into a life that we're really not prepared for many of us as young men, as males.
Hmm.
So we never had the opportunity to become a man. And then the ones we had that was the parents, many of them didn't know what it was to be a man
Hmm.
or how to be a man, the proper etiquettes or behavior of a man. Many of them didn't know. Like, I take me for example. I can use my life because that's the best example.
Okay.
Most of the men that I grew up was either using drugs, and at that time, the drug of choice was liquor.
Hmm.
Coke 45. It was liquor. And those men were very abusive. They beat women. They didn't take their check and come home if they had a job. They didn't come home with the funds and provide for the family.
Mm-hmm.
So my family grew up very poor because the men that my mother was married to, first guy she wasn't married to, second guy she married. But both of those men had the same problem. Alcohol was their problem. They was addicted to alcohol to the point where both of them died with cirrhosis of the liver. They would go out, they would drink, they would work every day. But when payday came around, they wouldn't pay the bills. They come in the house, one of them would claim he got beat up, people took his money. These types of things were males who had not developed into manhood, but yet was pushed into a position of responsibility, but they wasn't prepared for it. We have a lot of that today in our society and our culture. Males who take on the role of men, but yet have infant mind states or pre-developed mind states. So these men that was abusive, as me as a young man watching this behavior, when I became into my adult ages, I was very abusive because I've learned from the men before me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't drink. That was one thing I didn't do. I believe in my philosophy that when you grow up as a young woman or as a young man, the things your parents do will have an effect on you.
Okay.
Either you will involve yourself in the things they do and you will outdo them,
Mm-hmm.
or you will do the reverse and you will learn from their behavior and you will do better than them. So I learned on the side of alcoholism, and I never drank. I may have taken a sip out to dinner, but I've never drank. Still don't drink to the day.
Mm-hmm.
But on the side of abusing women, I didn't learn that. What I did learn was to abuse them, to misuse them, to take advantage of them, and to be aggressive toward them. That manly, macho attitude, I've had that for many of years in my life. That's all I knew. That's what I was taught. And even when I understood the Hebrew way of life, I brought that same type of behavior into the Hebrew way of life. Now, for a lot of men, it works well for them because the women are in a position where they're accustomed to that type of behavior also. They grew up in a household where their fathers treated their mothers like that, and they grew up accepting that as if it was normal. But I'm telling you, it's not normal behavior. It wasn't until I took a break from the whole Hebrew lifestyle, not the whole lifestyle, but fellowshipping and communing with other brothers and sisters for about 2 or 3 years it happened. And I had to reevaluate how I was living my life. I mean, I'm a spiritual leader. For most of my life, I've been a spiritual leader. But my downfalls came through me not having that control over my spirit, over myself, over my behavior. And I allowed the littlest things to affect me where I was aggressive or abusive to my women. Now, I want to make this clear because the question is, what makes a man a man? Or what's the responsibilities or the duties of a man?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us can't see that. So I want to make this clear because I want you to know that I understand that abusive men don't just come by beating physically on their women.
Right.
That's not the only form of abuse, but a lot of us are not aware of that. A real man, when I say real man, I mean a man that is matured in his behavior, his conduct. He knows how to command his home. He knows how to run his home in a manner that won't be abusive.
Okay.
You know, we don't have to force anything. First of all, you have to be careful the type of woman that you pick. If you pick a woman chasing after your knobs or your desires, most oftentimes you'll get the wrong woman. And it'll be a woman of conflict, a woman of strife, a woman that doesn't settle well with your spirit. And you will find yourself having to get out of alignment with your proper spirit and raise your voice or hold back things from her or strike her. So it's best that you use wisdom from the beginning and choose a woman that's in the proper alignment with your spirit. One that has the same desires that you have. One who has the same type of motivations toward the Creator that you have. No one's perfect. We're all in the stage of development and learning. But don't allow your development and your learning to be from those who are evildoers as opposed to those who strive after righteousness. And sisters, I say the same thing to you. When you're searching for a man, search for a man that's virtuous, that's righteous, striving to be right in the sight of the Creator. A man that prays to the Creator with you, to you, for you, you know? A man that's patient, not a man that's aggressive, not a man that demands that you serve him. If you don't want to serve him willingly, then you shouldn't be his wife. He shouldn't have to force you to make love to him. He shouldn't have to force you to go to the Knesset with him. He shouldn't have to force you to do anything. Because everything that you know he needs, you're right there willing to give to him because of how good he is to you as a man. Men who have learned their role and their place as men, that's how they give it up. You don't have to force a woman to do anything. Because a real woman, if you pick a real woman and you're careful in your selection, she will give you your desires before you even know that they're your desires. That's the beauty of a woman. They have that sense where they can tune into those things and they know how to please you before you even know that you desire it. Because as I said earlier, the child's desire is to please the father. The woman's desire is to please her man, a good man, a man that's really being and taking on the responsibilities of a man. So now what are the responsibilities of a man besides the ones that we mentioned earlier of learning to serve, fear, and obey the Creator? His heart, his mind, his essence has to be toward the Creator. First thing. And if that's absent, then he's not what you need. He's not a man. He hasn't developed. Notice I'm not saying that he's perfect. I'm just saying that his desires has to be toward the Almighty. Then you have to have a man that's really willing to put his family before himself. That is key to a lot of things in the development of a man. A young man has to be taught that his family comes first before him. If you can find this type of man, you'll know him by the traits and the characteristics that he displays. The small things. You know, people speak about things like chivalry, you know, men holding doors for women and women walking on a certain side of a man when you walk down the street. If you find a man that does those type of things, it's because he's conscious of his behavior. That's a good start. That's a good start. If you find a man that doesn't require you to get up and do for him while he lay in the bed sleep, that's a good start. Very good start. If you find a man who requests of you rather than demands of you, that's a good start. Now these things I'm saying to you sisters, I'm not worried about trying to impress anybody or make you feel a certain kind of way, or brothers, I'm not even trying to impress you to make you feel like Prince is weak. Furthest thing from the truth. I'm one of the strongest brothers I know. And the reason why I can say that with all confidence is because I'm in control of my spirit. I don't allow my emotions, let's put it this way, I do everything in my power not to allow my emotions to control my actions. I try to consider and think and reason before I respond. Because I've learned that that's the best way for a man to conduct himself. I remember one day I went to work I'm a bricklayer by trade. This was years ago. Years ago. And we was on a white man's job. White man. He owns the company. He had about 3 bricklayers. He had me, another bricklayer, and a laborer. We were all black. Everybody else was white. So lunchtime come around, all the brothers would get together, we sit down, we talk, we break bread, and we grew together. We knew each other from apprenticeships and other jobs and things, so we grew together. And when the time came that the boss laid off the labor, he laid us all off because we quit. We stuck together as men, as brothers. Something that's rare today that you don't see too often. We didn't care about the money. We cared more about the principle because the brother was laid off, the laborer, he was laid off unjustly. It wasn't right. So when he laid the labor off, he might as well just gave us all our checks because we all quit. We resigned that day. They blackballed us for a little while, but it didn't matter. We stuck together. That's what was most important to us. Now, I see these brothers from time to time, very rarely. I might see them once every 2 or 3 years maybe, in passing. The laborer, I don't even remember who he was. But the other bricklayer, I remember his name was Scotty. I remember him. I see him from time to time. We don't speak. We don't talk to each other. But what we did by sticking together, it made so much of an impact on our lives. It helped to develop us to the type of men that we are today. We understand what it means to be by your brother, stand by your brother no matter what. That's another responsibility of a man. A lot of men don't know how to stick by other men. They don't know how to stand strong. Every time we come together, somebody got to be higher than the other one. Somebody got to be in charge of the other one, and the other one got to be subservient. No, brothers, that's not how we do this. We work together. And whatever we need to achieve, we achieve because we work together, not because you're the big man or I'm the little man. It has nothing to do with that. It's about what we need to do to get the job accomplished. And right now, the job that we have to accomplish is bringing our people together. It's about raising and elevating the mentality of our people to give them a higher level of understanding and consciousness so that we can begin to develop together. Too many people are worried about individuality. I'm a very good bricklayer, extremely well. Got out of my apprenticeship early. Apprenticeship was for 4 years. I got out in 2.5. That's how good I was on a white man's job. I didn't have to quit. They laid him off. That's on him and his family. I could have stayed working and kept on making that money and bringing that bread home to my family, but that was my brother. Didn't know him. I knew him, but I didn't know him. I haven't seen him since, and if I saw him today, wouldn't remember who he was. But he was my brother, and that meant a lot. Now, if we can get our people today to understand that type of loyalty to each other, we ain't got to grow up together. You my brother. What hurts you hurts me. All this stuff about the police killing our people in the streets would cease to exist. You know why? Because for every one of us, they take every one of us, 10 of theirs is gone. If we really stick together like we're supposed to, see, they know this, they understand that. And that's why they keep us asleep. That's why they keep us arguing over religion and things to keep us separated and putting the man against the woman and the woman against the man and the man against the man and the children against both. That's why they do it. Because that allows them to maintain their place of authority over us. But if we Hebrew people, if just us Hebrews got it together and really came and a man really stood up as a man, taking on a responsibility that he has failed his people, because we have, men, we got to honestly admit, we failed our people. Well, we are failing. We haven't completely failed because it's not over yet. But we are failing our people. That's the responsibility of a man to have to be able to recognize when he is falling. Because if not, he will never understand how to grow and develop into what he needs to be. If you're doing drugs, and I mean smoking weed, even if you're smoking weed, that's a problem. If you're drinking, that's a problem. A lot of people say, well, Prince, that ain't the law. Everything that you need to develop yourself is not going to be present in the law. It's not going to be a violation against the law. You just have to understand that it's not good for you. A lot of us haven't learned these things are not good for us. We eat things that's not good for us. We drink things that's not good for us. We do things that's not good for us. Thereby, it prevents us from developing mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to be the very best that we can possibly be. If you ever study those people who were the greatest of the great, they didn't do none of those things. They didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they didn't do none of those things, and they didn't chase women. See, the adversary gave us all these things, especially chasing women. They teach us from our youth to chase women. Now they got a new trick. They teaching the youth to chase the same sex. Yeah. Another device that they use to keep us behind, just so that we will take longer to elevate to our highest and fullest potential. So, the job of a black man is to learn to fear and obey the Creator. And again, fear doesn't mean scared of like a ghost. It means to want to please the Almighty. Have that desire in you to want to make Him pleased with you through your every action, your every deeds. The next thing is for that black man or that Hebrew man to learn himself, his weaknesses, its faults. Because if you learn your weaknesses, when you start walking in that direction, before you slip, you're going to realize that's a problem and you're going to stop it before you slip and you fall. He has to be a provider for his family. He has to search out wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, constantly. He has to be a provider and the caretaker of his family. He has to learn that he don't have to rule his home with his hands and his mouth. His actions will dictate everything that takes place within his home. How he moves, even within his own home, will determine everything, whether there's peace or chaos within this home. So I pray that I've answered your question. It might have took me a little bit of time going around the corner, but I hope I've answered it.
Yes, you did.
All right. You had another question?
Yes, so I know many people in our walk of life many people have different ideas or understanding of women when they get their nida and the separation. Some women feel like, oh, it's a punishment, or, why do we have to separate? I know, what it says in the Tanakh, but you have people who still debate, what does it truly mean of separation and why we separate, even though we're not in the land, and some of us women don't have our own tent to go to, but what's the importance of that separation time?
Did you say that some of the women don't have their own tent to go to?
Or their own room?
But they married? You see what I mean? Somebody ain't doing their job. Just that simple. In us being Hebrew people, we have to do what thus saith the Creator.
Okay.
When we refuse to do what thus saith the Creator, it calls us to go into captivity, to fall from grace, to become a sinful nation. If the Most High says in the law, which He does, Leviticus the 15th chapter, it starts somewhere around the 18th, 19th verse, for us to become unclean if a woman is on her cycle, her time of separation, her nida, her flow, her blood flow, her impurities, and we don't do that, then that means that we're not keeping the law.
Right.
we're not obeying the Creator. It's very important that when your woman's cycle come on, you leave her alone. What I mean by you leave her alone, her responsibilities to you ceases. And it's not just sexual responsibilities. Not all responsibilities, because some things can never cease as long as you have a wife. But the majority of them, physical contact, emotional contact, spiritual contact, those things cease. You can't no longer lie with your wife when she's on her cycle. You can't enjoy the sexual pleasures of having a wife when she's on her nida. Emotionally, well, spiritually, you can't pray with your wife when she's on her nida. Because if she's in nida, she shouldn't be praying to the Creator anyway. A lot of people don't understand that. I told y'all we get into some spiritual things. Spiritually, if you're unclean, if you're in the unclean, spiritual uncleanliness, you shouldn't approach Him to the Most High. The Most High has taken people out for a lot less than that. This is why, if any of you ever heard me pray, I always pray to the Most High for permission to approach unto Him before I begin my prayer. Because the reason is that we are all perpetually unclean. We're all in that state. There's no way we can sit around and fool ourselves. We are all unclean for one reason or another. So every time we go down and prostrate ourselves before this King, you ask for mercy and forgiveness and permission to approach. So this is what we do. If a woman is on nida and she intentionally makes prayer to the Almighty, she should cease to do that. Because she's intentionally coming in a condition before the King, and she shouldn't. You don't just approach people of authority in a certain manner. What makes you think that you should just approach the Most High in any old kind of manner? Something that is forbidden. And the Most High is greater than anything and everyone. Like, for example, if you go in a courtroom and rather you the plaintiff or the defendant, you don't just get up out the chair and walk up to the judge and start saying whatever you want to say to the judge. They'll jack you up, knock you down, and beat you up, put you out the room, handcuff you, and maybe they'll lock you up. So the Most High is a zillion times greater than the judge. So why do we think that we can just approach Him in any old kind of condition, at any old time, the Most High Himself tell you that we can't approach Him at any old time. But we don't listen to that. We approach Him, we do what we want, we disrespect Him, we do all kind of things. A lot of us do all type of evil, and then on the Shabbat, we run to the house of worship. And we forget that we were just committing adultery, harlotry, we're stealing, we robbing, we lying. We do all types of things, and then we run to the house of worship, and we want to give praises to the Most High, and we want Him to accept us. And we're in a state of uncleanness. Ask the Most High for forgiveness before you approach Him in prayer. For several reasons. One, because we are all in a perpetual unclean state. Two, because of our own iniquities and sins that we commit before the Almighty. Now, when a woman is on her nida, she should not just ignore the Creator. She should humbly say whatever she's going to say to the Creator, but don't go about it in the same way of making a ritual prayer. Like prostrating on the floor, praying to the Most High, spread out like you would if you was really trying to reverence Him and give Him His utmost respect. You approach the Most High in a different way. You don't do it the same way. Your husband should not, scriptures say that anything that she touches becomes unclean. So if you touch your husband and you're on your nida, he becomes unclean as well. And he should refrain from making prayer at that particular time. This is why when you read the story of Jacob, it said that he had, each of his Nashim had their own dwelling. They had their own tents. And when they went into Leah's tent, Rachel's tent, searching for the idols, Rachel couldn't get up. She wouldn't move. She took the idols and hid them underneath of her. And she lied and told them she was on her time of woman. Her nida was present. So that she would not have to get up. That's the type of respect that we are to show when a woman is on her nida. It worked for her advantage at a bad time. You know, she was doing some evil things, practices, but it showed you the custom of our people, the ancient customs of our people. So what Prince is saying is not new. This is what our forefathers did. When a woman is on her nida, her cycle, she's separated. And that's one of the importance of, if a man has multiple wives, they all need their own place. They all need their own dwellings. And if you can't afford it and you only got one dwelling, they all need their certain section in that dwelling. So that when they are nida, they work together as a unit, and the ones that not nida take care of everybody else, while the ones who are nida can take a vacation, a mini break from their responsibilities and duties. The Most High knew what he was doing when he allowed a woman to have that blood flow and then told us to separate from her during that time. Another good thing is, it's for 8 days. On the 8th day, she's clean. But another good thing about that is that it gives the husband time to appreciate all that the woman does. Because when she's no longer doing it, you never know you never know what it's like to have something done for you until you don't have it done anymore. And as long as it's taking place in your life, you grow accustomed to it. You don't really have the full impact of appreciation for that particular thing until that thing is no longer done. And once that thing is no longer done, you be like, oh man, that's, they really looked out. They was really helping out a lot. There was really a lot that goes into that. And when a man has to fend for himself, cook for himself, that's why a lot of men teach against this. That's why a lot of men ignore this portion of law. And they're around their women. They sleep with their women. Their women cook for them. You shouldn't cook for your man if you're nida. You shouldn't use the same toilet. The law says that anything that she sits upon or lies upon is unclean. So if my wife nida is on and we lying in the bed together and I get up and we go and make prayer, then we are intentionally provoking the Most High. Why would you want to do that? So if your wife is nida, she can sleep in the back room, or she can sleep in your bed, you can sleep on the couch. However you want to do it. But y'all must separate. You have to be careful. Have things designated in your house that if you're nida, baby, you sit here, or don't sit here because I'm going to sit here, and then you can sit anywhere else you want. However it goes, you have to have things designated in your home for the time of nida. Your children must understand that law. In the house of worship, you do not go to the house of worship if you're nida. You shouldn't. Some people haven't risen to that spiritual level where they think that it's a spiritual thing to be unclean. But it is. It's a spiritual thing. And a lot of people that live in the flesh, the carnal, the physical, they won't understand this parable that's being placed before them. They won't understand it, but it's okay. It's okay. Because the longer you're in this truth, the more you search out that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that I was speaking about earlier, then the more things will be revealed to you on a spiritual level.
Mhm.
So I hope I was able to help.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't think so. I didn't write any more down, and I was trying to jog my thought process about questions. I just, like, when I have conversations with people throughout the week, those conversations provoke me to just, ask questions for clarity for not just myself, but for other sisters or even other brothers. Because I know one thing that happens a lot with us sisters is, like, when we're Nidon, even the young daughters, and I try to explain this to our daughters, because they be like, why does everybody have to know we're Nidon? And I try to tell them it's not to expose you in a bad way, but it's just to because you do have some people like yourself who truly follow that to the T of no touching and separation, and then you have some people who don't care. But I try to tell the children that regardless of the don't care attitude, we have to do our best to follow the law, and as we do our best, then people watch and see that, and they then inquire or they start to do the same practices. And so it's just more of that clarity, because I think, a lot of women say, it's just embarrassing when men know that you're unclean or Nida. And I used to feel that way too, but now I'm like, okay, it does make sense, to let people know, because some people don't want to get unclean, as you say, before they approach the Most High. So,
It's true.
yeah.
So we have to be mindful of those things.
Okay. So, I'm not sure if anybody on live has a question. Sitting here with my Ish, and I just had a series of questions that I was asking him. And, but if nobody has a question, we'll sign off, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And, but if you have a question after we sign off, you can always inbox myself or my Ish, and I'm sure he'll be willing to talk further at any time. So everybody have a wonderful Shabbat and a blessed evening. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
There's a lot of people tuning in and commenting. Your sneakers showed. Your sneakers showed at some point, because I was like, yo, do you look at Fred?